You're watching VHA TV, the award-winning satellite network of VHA. This program is confidential. Duplication of this program without permission of VHA is prohibited, except for use by participating healthcare organizations.
Hello. Welcome to VHA's 2012 Supply Chain Education Series, designed to help your organization achieve excellence in supply chain management. I'm Nick Fincher. I'm your host for today's program. During our program, if you have a question or comment at any time, you want to be sure to use the Ask a Question button on your screen. You can also send us an email at vhatvlive@vha.com. You can also find the accreditation and disclosure information for the presenters and the planning committee in your handout. So, as you know, cost reduction goals are first and foremost on the minds of supply chain individuals. As a reaction to this preoccupation with cost reduction, there's a lot of buzz around supply chain analytics, business intelligence, and benchmarking tools. In fact, many of the questions and comments we've received from you, our viewers, have been about the practical application of these tools and solutions during the contracting cycle. In other words, what you've been asking us is, could you show me best practice and show me them in action? So based on your feedback, rather than trying to create a story through PowerPoint slides here in our studio, you're going to be hearing directly from individuals at Altman Hospital in Canton, Ohio, who use analytics with positive outcomes. And at the end of the program, we're going to have a live interaction with a member of their staff to answer your questions. So join me now as we tour their facility and hear how they continue to leverage analytics to achieve their success. We're here in beautiful Canton, Ohio on the campus of Altman Hospital. We're going to learn firsthand how this organization has integrated supply chain analytics into their cost reduction strategies. So let's go inside and talk with a few of the staff. We're sitting here at Altman Hospital with Chris Remark, the Chief Operating Officer of Altman Hospital. Chris, thanks for taking the time to join our program today.
My pleasure.
Why don't you give us a little information on your background? How'd you end up here at Altman?
Sure. I've been here at Altman for about 19 years, and I actually started in our finance department as a financial analyst. And after several years, spent some time in strategic planning for the organization. We have a network of hospitals, smaller hospitals, and I actually spent a little bit of time as a Chief Operating Officer at one of our smaller network affiliates, and then came back here where I've been ever since as Chief Operating Officer.
So can you tell us a little bit about Altman Hospital? Maybe give us a description of the organization.
Sure. Altman is a 650-bed community-based hospital, and we're actually part of a vertically integrated system. And we really base everything we do on a daily basis around a value equation. And we base everything we do on an equation of service plus outcomes plus cost equals value.
Maybe you could share with us or give us a little bit of a description of what the competitive environment's like for Altman in this community.
Sure. We have three other hospitals that we would consider our competition, but really we see ourselves competing regionally and even nationally when you talk about attracting physician talent. And so just like any other healthcare hospital environment, it's also a very competitive environment here.
So part of the reason that we're here today is we're looking at the way Altman uses business intelligence or analytics solutions in a best practice environment to support your cost reduction initiatives. As a COO, how important do you see supply chain expense management as part of your competitive strategy?
Sure. It's extremely important. I referenced earlier our value equation, and that of service plus outcomes plus cost equals value. So cost is really a cornerstone of that value equation. And we have around $70 million in supply expense in our organization annually. And just like any other hospital, it's a large piece of our expense budget. So the way we manage that, the way we utilize it, the way we control utilization of those costs is extremely important. you have to start with a good basis of information. And from that, we can use that with our clinicians to have them help us make good decisions. And that's where it becomes real important, is involving the clinicians in our decision making, but that starts with good, solid information.
How do you see your role as a COO in supporting or directing the activities around the use of analytics and sort of the willingness to adopt the processes in your organization?
Mm-hmm. You know, it starts really with the organizational structure, and one thing that we've done here at Altman is we've elevated the supply chain to the C-suite, and so we have representation of supply chain, our vice president of supply chain at the table of the executive committee, and it starts there with that commitment in the organization, and then introducing the tools and the analytics and the information that comes out of analytics to the entire executive team, because it takes the entire team to really move the effort forward.
Do you believe your program, the way it's operating now, would have been as successful without executive support?
No, that really elevated it to a new level, and not only within the executive team, but across the organization. It's now seen as a very important piece of our strategy.
A lot of facilities, and I'm sure Altman is just like many of those, PPI is a big area or a big target for expense reduction. Have you witnessed, since you guys have been using analytic solutions to generate data, any kind of effect on your physicians in there? Are they on board? Are they responsive? Is it working for you with them?
Sure. You know, physicians really want data, and you know, daily in their interactions in their practice and here in the hospital, they use data to make decisions. And prior to business analytics, you know, our information we've been able to give them on supply costs, supply spend, utilization has been somewhat limited. So these tools we see is very foundational to being able to integrate the physicians into our supply chain process and helping us become more efficient, save dollars, and decrease utilization.
You know, a lot of the folks that are watching the program today are supply chain managers. They're in the departments and all. As an executive, what would you recommend to them how should they, maybe they're using analytics, or how should they behave so that they can gain access to individuals like yourself to be able to make the case for whatever programs they've got going?
An executive team is always looking for opportunity, and opportunity to improve our costs, improve efficiency, patient outcomes. And so being able to, you know, you need good information to present to that executive team. And I think, you know, using the analytics, using the information that comes out of there to make a business case, and being able to summarize it to where it's very easy to see the opportunity and seize that opportunity, I think is one way that materials managers can really catch the attention of the executive team.
Thanks for having us on the campus today. Great organization, great people, and we appreciate all the information you've passed along to us.
Thank you, and it was a pleasure having you here.
Chris, good to see you.
Good to see you.
Tell us a little bit about yourself.
I started at Altman Hospital 16 years ago now. Started as a surgical assistant. I worked in surgery for a few years, got into administration, went back, got my MBA, and really started to get it interesting with the business side. The OR, as you know, recently I took over the entire supply chain in the past 4 years, and just recently took over lab and pharmacy. So currently I'm the vice president of supply chain, lab, and pharmacy for the organization. Our edge in cost containment has been one of our biggest advantages over the years. We were founded in the 1980s on a low-cost, high-quality healthcare philosophy.
And I know we're going to talk a little bit about the way your organization uses analytical solutions, but before we get there, maybe you could tell us a little bit about what was it like before these kind of solutions were available? How did you guys do what you do?
Sure. In today's society, we have access to more data than we ever have before. So we needed to figure out a way to utilize that data, get past the vendor beating to a philosophy of being transparent with our costs and being, you know, utilizing the data that we have at our fingertips to our advantage. We had some experience with data analytics in the past. Did not work out the way we expected it to, so when we engaged in our new business analytics tool that we have started with, we knew we needed to take a different approach. We needed to have dedicated resources to mine that data and make sure that our data was accurate when we sat down with the vendors and with our physicians. And being transparent with the physicians is something that we realized we had to do from the beginning.
So you guys are bringing the physicians to the table, and you are extracting data out of the analytics solution you're using, sharing it with them. How's that working for you? What's your physician's reaction been?
Pretty good. The physicians were skeptical of the data at first. What we found to be successful is before you even meet with the vendors, you need to sit down with the physicians, discuss with the physicians what your plan is going to be, show them the data, so that before the vendors can counterpoint you, physicians are already informed with the data that you want them to see and that they need to see in order for the negotiations to be successful. So putting the physicians at the forefront, having them at the table, and then also on the back end, making sure that we inform them of what our successes were with the projects. So it's really, from involving the physicians, a three-part process. Inform them in the beginning, make sure that they're at the table and involved in negotiations with you, and then on the back end, make sure that they're informed of the successes that you've had.
Share the successes, yeah, that's got to be key. A lot of times you may find when you're trying to extract data, you can actually end up in a scenario where you could have, say, paralysis by analysis. How do you guys avoid that? What's your secret in dealing with those folks?
Well, what we've done is when you sit down with the vendors with your data, we want to make sure that we have multiple sources. So you can't just sit down and say, we use this benchmarking tool. What we've done is we've been able to utilize multiple benchmarking tools to come together for more of a average of the overall market. So we can say not just one benchmark, but two benchmarks are showing us opportunities in this area. So making sure that we can counterpoint everything that comes from the vendors is very important to us.
So are you actually using the analytics solution that you subscribe to set goals? You're setting specific goals?
Yes.
Around cost?
We saw from the initial readings on our benchmarking tool that we did have a good price point. However, there were opportunities. And the nice thing about our current analytic tools is it allows us to pinpoint those areas of opportunity, to go after those cost savings in those specific areas. So being more pointed in the areas that we go after, not just attacking one big solution for total joints per se, but going after specific pricing on specific aspects of that. One of the most successful areas we've had is cardiac. We attacked cardiac rhythm management devices. We attacked valves and stents, all in different aspects. So we were able to go after those individually, but then bring them together in a whole for a cardiac negotiation strategy.
So Chris, talk to me a little bit about the kind of results you've been seeing. You mentioned cardiac was an area that you focused on. Where'd you start? Where are you now? Where do you think you're going?
Right. So initially when we went live with our analytics tool, we were able to see that we were around 38 with our original index. Through some working initially, we were able to get down to around 35. With cardiac, we developed a strategy where we have drive to 25. Our goal was to get down to the 25th index. So we started on a long journey. We used our analytics, and we were able to get down into the 20s in cardiac.
The areas that you're selecting to target for your cost reduction opportunities, when you're seeing this kind of movement in indices where you're seeing 3 or 4 points on an indices, is there a pretty good financial correlation to that? Sure.
We've been able to identify these savings and then track them back. We have, just like all hospitals, we have major supply savings goals every year. This year, our savings goal for the organization was $3.5 million. We were able to identify through the recent cardiac program that we did, we were able to negotiate about $300,000 worth of cost savings in 2 initiatives.
What has been the reaction to the supplier community that services Altman to the way you're using analytics and the way you present them with data and your negotiation strategy?
So originally, when you sit down with a vendor and you provide them data, they're always going to question it. They're always going to say, well, this is not true pricing because this is a hospital that has 100% commitment to this vendor, for example, Boston Scientific. So being able to utilize multiple benchmarking tools has been very important for us. So going back to the vendor and saying, no, that's not true.
Have you sensed sort of a change in their approach when they walk into Altman as compared to before?
They're a lot more nervous than they used to be when they come into the hospital. They realize it's a different day and age as well. So they are coming more prepared. The biggest thing that we've changed at our organization is being more prepared in negotiations. It used to be that the vendors would spend days getting ready for a negotiation strategy session with a hospital. A hospital would be more reactive in their negotiations. We would show up and then react to the data that the vendor was presenting to us. What we've tried to do is flip the tables on that. When the vendor shows up, we want to be armed with the data so that we can be the ones on the offensive instead of the defensive.
And in the cardiology area, your cardiology manager is actually engaged in the process as well, correct?
Yeah, that's been very successful for us. Having a manager in your clinical area who's knowledgeable about the cost and willing to help with the negotiations is key. They have to be there at the table too. They're as important as the physicians being with you at the table with these vendors, because the vendors see these people more often than they see the purchasing people. So when they come into a room for a negotiation session and see the manager of the department, the purchasing buyer, and have the physician support the conversation that's going on, they come knowing that we're ready.
I know you're reaping the benefits of cost reduction. Any feel for, is your supply chain staff, are they more efficient? And do they get their work done faster? Do they have more confidence?
I think the biggest thing for our supply chain from the purchasing side of things is they're more engaged. They're not going into negotiations blind anymore. They're as prepared as our vendors are. And that was one of the things that I wanted to make sure of in our purchasing department. I want them to be as prepared, if not more prepared, than the vendors when they go into a negotiation.
So maybe in a wrap-up for our conversation here, if I'm a supply chain manager in the middle of who knows where, I'm trying to negotiate, reduce my costs and all, what recommendations would you have related to analytics to support it and how I go about getting started?
The nice thing about our current analytic tool is it's applicable for the smallest hospital and the smallest hospital and the largest hospital. It doesn't matter if you're the Mayo Clinic or if you're a small independent hospital in the middle of Ohio. The indices and the way that they're calculated takes into account the size and spend of the hospital. So you can filter out hospitals for your size. You can also see hospitals that are larger than you and compare those prices. Obviously, the smaller hospitals may not get the advantage of the larger spend hospitals, but there's still opportunity there. And the nice thing is with the current analytic tool, you can really filter out and get those like comparatives. So when you sit down with a vendor at a small hospital, you can be prepared with like-sized data.
So Chris, when we were coming here to your pharmacy, which is a new area for you, we walked through your beautiful facility. I mean, it's a beautiful hospital.
Thank you.
Obviously, I guess having executive support for your cost containment efforts and what you're trying to achieve using analytics and all is key to your reinvestment in facilities, equipment, technology. Maybe you could elaborate on the connection there.
Sure. Not only do we have to cover our investment in the analytics, but we also have to get savings to support our other organizational goals. So being able to expand and grow the facility and reinvest in the facility is all supported by our savings initiatives. Analytics has allowed us to do that in supply chain, reach our savings goals every year that I've had supply chain. We reach anywhere between $3 and $4 million of savings every year. We're able to take that money and reinvest in the organization. We are a different organization in that we don't take on debt. So every project that we engage in, we have to be able to have the cash on hand to support that project. So our supply chain initiatives allow us to support those efforts.
Okay, good. Thanks. Appreciate that.
Great.
So in today's world of analytic solutions, with the solution that you guys are using, there's a lot of information that you could access, which I'm assuming you can access in real time, almost maybe more information than you need. give me an idea of how you narrow down. So do you care? Do you only look at hospitals that look just like you? Do you care if they're only buying in this region of the country? What things are typically important to you as you're trying to clarify an opportunity and maybe break through the supplier's line of value?
We look at like hospitals to start, but then if our pricing is sometimes better because our index is fairly good, we will bump it up to a larger hospital to see if volume makes a difference in price. So, but we do not limit ourselves to geographical or to the size of the hospital. We want the best price regardless of how big we are.
Right, right.
So we don't limit any of that. We do look at all of that, and we do slice it and dice it so that we can get that information. But we still go for the very best price. We try to stay under the 25th percentile.
And do you prioritize sort of, I guess, your bang for your buck opportunities? So maybe PPI is the biggest ones, cardiac, orthopedics. What comes under that?
With this particular analytical tool, we can look at anything. We can look at med-surg items, we can look at distributed items, we can look at single item. For instance, if we wanted to just target orthopedics and look at our screws and plates, we could do that. We could go down to the eaches. We can also, with this particular analytical tool, build total joints. So if we wanted to pay for joints rather than buy them by the each, we wanted to build a contract that said, I just want to pay for a joint, and this is the price I'm going to pay, and I don't care what components you use. We can analyze what 4 components are going to be the right price point for us.
Describe your negotiation style with suppliers pre-analytics versus today with analytics, because you talked about the old days of beating up the vendor. How do you deal with them now?
I still beat them up. To me, a vendor's a vendor. Now we come in with information, and we have a plan, and we can stage it so that we're having pre-meetings, and we can have the right people in the room to throw them off their game. In the past, the first 10 years that I was here and I was in the OR doing the buying for the OR, the vendors would do that to us. They would come to us, and unbeknownst to us, they would bring their manager with them, and all of a sudden it would throw us off our game, and here we're going to beat up the vendor, and now his manager's here, and he's got the clout to say yes or no, and now we demand that. Now we say, we have the information, we know what we want from you, please bring someone who can make that decision.
So would you basically say the use of analytics has pretty much leveled the playing field
Yes.
between you and who's
Yes.
trying to sell you something? So without naming names of anybody in particular, do you have any examples of maybe where a supplier had come in and told you, if you achieve X volume, I'll give you the very best price, and it turned out that that's not the way the supplier practices, or in order to get the best price, you need to give me X volume, and then you find out that's not the way they practice? Or
There's one particular vendor that we deal with that has been a challenge. However, they've always come to the table for us. And they have a contract that is structured based on commitment, based on your volume that you give to them. And they also have an owned and a consigned pricing structure. So if you want to buy the set, this happens to be in spine, if you want to buy that set, the pricing of those each items when you go to use them is a different price structure than if I want them to bring the set in every time. The same item, same screw, is a different price. And that has frustrated me for many years. And I finally have gotten it through their head that you can't give me 2 different prices just because of the way I own the set or not own the set. So they have come to the table, and we have restructured that entire contract here just because of the knowledge from the analytics, knowing what prices are out there and where our pricing should be.
so you've been able to reconcile whatever would have been the difference between owning versus
Yes.
consignment. That's a pretty,
That
pretty
was,
potent advantage.
That was big. That saved us a lot of money last year.
So part of the way that I gather you're establishing trust with your physicians, you guys are very transparent with them, and you're communicating to them that your goal is not to get the cheapest product, correct?
Correct.
Have you had any success with them leaning toward the cheapest products, or do you find yourself getting more of the right price on the more expensive products still?
The one initiative that I was talking about, the trocars, they did win on that one. They got the item that they chose. They were astonished at the pricing, and we were able to push the vendor even further than what they originally offered us. So it did help that they saw the difference in pricing, because they were able to mention to the vendors that, you know, this is absurd. There's nothing better. There's nothing that much different about what you're selling here. Just because I like it better, you can't charge the hospital more.
Do you envision a point in the future where you wouldn't need analytics anymore? Can you just achieve the best price and stop?
No, it's a daily thing. I told my boss when we got into this, I want the ticker tape going across my door so I can watch my index change daily. Sometimes it goes up, sometimes it goes down. It's not something, it's a moving target. It's not something that we can just stop doing. I get a cost savings initiative given to me every year, and I have to find it somewhere.
So Chris, earlier we were talking about identifying opportunities and using the data to do that, and I know we wanted to come in and take a look at a couple of your monitors and maybe see you in action. You've got John here that's going to drive with you. Maybe you could show me, a novice, you know, how do you source an opportunity, and then how do you do the deep dive to see what the extent of that opportunity might be?
Well, generally, we'll start at the top and look at the broadest scope, which is our HCO index comparison, and we'll see where we sit with our numbers. And from there, we'll look at different unspec families or classes of products and see if there's a need to drive costs out. For instance, the one that we have on the screen right now is spine, and as you can see, there's a lot of red. They use a stoplight approach, red, yellow, and green, to let you know whether your price index is high, low, or medium. And as you can see, I'm all red on that page. So there's some work that needs to be done with that.
So Chris, when we were talking earlier, you were talking about your HCO index, which we talked about was sort of how your facility or your organization compares against the other folks in this database. If I'm reading this correctly, that's you in the purple, and this is everybody else that you're benchmarking against in this segment of spend. And that's your index right there, 33.3. And it looks like you don't have a lot of competition. Is that basically what we're seeing on this?
That's exactly how to read that. This is with hospitals of our like size.
So I can see here where you've looked at what's in scope versus what's identified, and then you've tried to match that up against similar size facilities.
Correct.
So this is that one shot that gives you an overall view of how are you doing sort of in your segment across the board.
Correct. We'll start with what we know about the like-size hospitals, and then we'll sometimes move it up to the larger group. We'll look at the 80 to 120 million and see where we fall there.
Yeah,
sometimes it has to do with volume, and sometimes it doesn't.
It would seem like you sort of would want to know, am I getting the prices I'm getting because I'm the size that I am, and if I was bigger, would I be getting better prices?
Right.
So you could actually adjust to see that.
Yes.
Can we do that? There we go.
Now I'm green.
Now you're the green guy.
I'm still
and
down.
you're still doing pretty good.
Yes. But there are some others that are doing better. I can look at the size of the bubble and know that they're larger hospitals than I am. So that could be part of it. But then, again, like you said, sometimes it has to do with volume and sometimes it doesn't. And now we know there's opportunity. There are people getting better prices for their products.
Hey, Sean. Good to see you. So we're here in your cath lab, which in many facilities is one of the most costly areas. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your background and maybe a little about your lab here?
Okay. My role here within the Heart Center is kind of a unique role. I have a clinical background, been at Altman here about 11 years. But the unique thing about my position is I have an indirect link to the supply chain. And what I've been able to do and what this position has done is really bridge the gap between supply chain and the clinical side. We really strive to make this a team effort and bring supply chain in together with physicians, the clinicians, and really react and join together in looking at cost containment.
One of the things that we hear in our discussions with members across the country is they're all focused on cost reduction, and they're all focused on physician preference items, or PPI, which you're sitting on the hotbed of that. Yes. What's your role? How do you engage your physicians? Talk a little bit about.
We really get the physicians involved up front. Transparency, data is shown to them, everything is up front with them, and we allow them to have a voice at the table. Most of our negotiations are done with physicians in the room. A lot of times physicians will be calling vendors on the side to negotiate some things that we allow them to do. So the physicians are a heavily involved component here, and that's the way we feel we've been successful here throughout the last couple of years.
So, and you're using data in your discussions with them. I think I heard in this organization you create what you refer to as a story.
Yep.
And so you're showing physicians elements of data that are the foundation of the story, and you're actually allowing them to participate in the choices that you as a team are making.
Yes, and I want to make an important part here, that the decisions that are made are not jeopardizing clinical outcomes. The physicians will determine if a product is clinically better than another, and for most parts sometimes that pricing may be higher. But the bottom line is, if we choose that product, we want to get that at the best price. It may be the highest price, but we want to make sure that product still falls in the best price for that item.
So I think it's a very valid point. You guys it's not about cheap.
No.
It's about quality at the right price.
At the right price.
Which has got to be key for getting that physician buy-in.
Yeah, and it's to the point now where we have such good physician buy-in where they come to me and say, hey, I've got a product, I want to look at this, there's another one on the market, can you do some analytics for me? Are we getting good pricing on the one that we're currently utilizing, or can we pursue this and look at this? And a lot of times, that second product that they bring to us, we can get better pricing. So now they're bringing ideas to us, which is great because it stimulates them and it allows them to feel that they're part of the process.
How important do you think it is, or the role that the data, being able to present scientific information to scientists in getting their buy-in?
I think that's integral. I mean, you know, a lot of times when we first started this process and showing physicians data, their first instinct is to be that the data is skeptical. But as you go through the process and explain to them, here's what we're looking at, and for our instance here at Altman, we can cross-reference to other databases that we have. So we can really check if there's a price that may fall out or is it close. So you really have to sit down with the physician and really explain, here's the process that we went through, here's the data, here's the sources we got it from, and really explain that this data is valid.
You got a great story, and I'm not going to say it for you, I want you to say it, but related to valves, which is a high-cost physician preference item. You've been uniquely successful in reducing cost and the amount. Maybe tell us a little.
To couple that, not only valves, but with our drug-eluting stents, we went through the process here negotiating our contracts, and for a number of years we had a vendor that was here for a long period of time. And through this process, we told them we were going to consolidate vendors, we're going to get it down to 2 vendors. Everybody's going to have an equal opportunity, an equal shot. The one vendor came back, really got arrogant about the pricing. They knew they had the business here, thought regardless, you know, they could come down a little bit. But it ended up that vendor is no longer on our shelf now for 2 years because we initiated another vendor, and that was all physician-driven. They were comfortable from a clinical standpoint to use the other vendor, and they were fine with us shifting to another vendor. Same with the valve. Company was off our shelf. We told them pricing wasn't where we needed to be. 2 days later, they come back with an additional $500 discount off the valve.
So are you finding that the using the data and positioning it well, the physicians, it doesn't sound like they're participating reluctantly. It sounds like they're participating proactively. I guess they can get, maybe angry is not the word, but they've been told they were getting the best and they find out they haven't.
Yes, so and a lot of times when they find that out, it really bothers them because for so long physicians think we have the best price because we're using the product a lot, we have good volume, And it's now to the point where the physicians come to me and say, hey, who are we going to call today? Who are we working pricing with? They're really involved. They want to be involved because they've seen the impact that we've had and the successes that we've had with some of the things that we've done.
Any experiences using the analytics tools that you've got to be able to identify cost shifting? So you saw an opportunity, negotiated it down, and then all of a sudden the price creeped up on another product that they're selling?
Well, we find that a lot, especially on the CRM side. You know, they'll match a price to a lower technology, and then 30 days from now they introduce a new technology which shifts the cost upwards, so you lose the initial cost savings you had. So what we've done here, we've built new technology clauses into our contracts stating they have to bring their newest technology in at the price that we set, or else they can't bring it in.
Yeah,
and that's been very successful, and our docs have bought into that because they've realized some of the techniques that these vendors are doing. So we've had to be really cognizant of that and really be careful in how we negotiated our contracts.
And then, so there's the historical element of data and what people are paying, but there's also viewing information so that you can proactively determine what you want to pay, maybe as a basis of your RFPs, process, or what have you. Maybe you could talk a little bit about the way you guys are proactively using data to define what you want and what you want to pay.
Yeah, we are very proactive here. Before we utilize any new technology, if a physician comes and say, I want to use a certain supply, we go and we run through the analytics of this supply. We find out what best price is out there, what we feel like we should be paying, what the vendor relationship is with the physician. So we're really doing a lot of research before we go to the negotiation table with the vendors. I won't even sit down with a vendor to discuss pricing until I have all the data at my hands, because I don't want to go blind into a meeting and not get crossed up with a question from the vendor and I don't have information. So
one of the things that we wanted to communicate through this program, you know, was best practices, and so kind of a unique situation having a supply chain individual representative in the cath lab. For any of our viewers that maybe can't, you know, they just don't have the financial means to place somebody in their cath lab, what would be some things that you think they could replicate, things that you guys are doing that are at its core?
Well, I think the one thing we've done is the specialty steering committees, because that, like I said, brings everybody together, and then they have a voice at the table. There's specific agenda items on there for physicians, clinicians, and supply chain. So that brings and we've found that to be very successful across all of our areas within the Heart Center. And we meet monthly. They're an hour long, so we have a strict agenda. We're in and out, but the physicians know if they do have something they want to discuss, there's an avenue to do that on a monthly basis. They do things in between, but there is a strict meeting time where they can bring something and discuss that. And then we follow up, and the turnaround time is very quick once something is brought to that meeting. But I think with me working with physicians for a long period of time, I think if you're transparent with them, you allow them to have a voice at the table, to make them feel like they're part of the process. You're honest and open with them. And then I think also communicating with them, not only showing them upfront data, but showing them the results and getting back to them and what we've done is very highly important to them as well.
Thanks for all that great information on how you guys have been able to develop the process that you've got, working with your physicians, merging the data, achieving your outcomes. You've got a great setup here. It's a great looking department. I understand you've got some unique features in the way that you're actually storing some of these supply items. Can we take a look?
Sure, Nick, let's go.
Good. So, Sean, tell us a little bit. What do we got going on here?
This is our centralized supply area for all cardiac cath labs. This door right here you can see is a cath lab. So every cath lab and EP lab has direct access to the supply area. What this has done for us as far as organization-wise, it's allowed us to consolidate our supplies, standardize our supplies, and also reduce duplication. All the rooms now have direct access. We don't have to supply each room to maximum pars. We could come back here and access supplies whenever we want. It's under full lockdown, so what that means, only certain clinical staff have access to this. The physicians do not even have access to get the supplies back here, which helps us. It's under more control for us. We know what we have back here, and organizationally it allows us to really duplicate and put things where they need to be.
This physical structure is just an impressive sort of proof statement of the relationship you have with your physicians, the fact that they're not coming back here and you're not duplicating supplies or materials, the catheters, the stents here. You had a story for me on those catheters. Tell me about, I know you guys use the analytics data to help you down the path. What did you do with catheters?
Yeah, with the catheters and also our CRM devices, we moved from most of this inventory in here before we got the analytics tool was all owned. What we did is we moved a lot of that owned inventory to consignment, which takes a lot of that cash off our books, opens up for more capital dollars, and gives us more money to spend in improvements into the facility. It takes that control out of our hands, which is nice because now we don't have to worry if a product expires or is not used. It's on the vendor. It's not on us. We don't own that. We don't get charged for that.
And I think in your world, the cash value of that little change was about how much?
It was over $500,000. So it was a huge benefit from us. Just another success story for us. And that was a result, again, of all the teamwork that was put into this.
Sean, this is really impressive. Thanks for showing us. Excellent job. Great teamwork.
Thank you. Thanks for being here. We're really proud of what we have here.
Good. We're here with John Schoonover and Greg Rector, and I know one of the things that we've been talking about on the utilization of supply chain analytics is kind of one of the more important parts, I guess, and that would be after you've identified an opportunity and developed the opportunities, tracking and trending it. And I know you gentlemen are going to talk to us about that. John, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and what your role is here at Altman?
Well, I'm the contract administrator here at Altman Hospital, and part of my role is to identify savings and keep the ERP system updated, pricing, and manage price discrepancies as well.
Great. And Greg, I know you don't work for Altman, but what is your role as it relates to supply chain analytics and what Altman is doing?
For the analytical tool that Altman uses, I'm the advisor, and my responsibility is to come in and work with supply chain here at Altman, specifically with John, to identify opportunities, expand those opportunities, and look for ways to really take cost out of their supply chain.
Maybe you can tell us a little bit about your process and the steps you go through to be able to track and trend when you've achieved results.
Well, the first thing we want to do is make sure our ERP system is updated. That way we can track any price discrepancies that may be occurring.
Okay, so then your next step?
The next step would be tracking the any pricing discrepancies we may have, monitoring our index levels, utilizing our analytical tools that we have.
And so, Greg, I know you play a role in the way they track and trend. Maybe you could elaborate.
We want to make sure that once that contract's been awarded, the new pricing has been loaded, that we do go back and reuse the analytic tool or continue to use the analytics tool to ensure that, one, they're enjoying the pricing that they've been awarded, but also to make sure that those manufacturers don't cost shift, don't look for other products to spread the discounts that they've given up in order to offset some of the savings that the hospital had.
So, John, for your job, the difference between now and before you had an analytics solution and access to data, what was it like? How did you do what you do now when you didn't have it?
Well, as before, we would rely a lot on the vendors, the manufacturer, to supply our data. Well, with the analytical tool now that we have, with an outside party, we can view our pricing and benchmark it against other hospitals comparable to our size.
Do you guys mind showing us sort of what you do when you're tracking and trending to actually be able to monitor categories of product?
Yeah, one of the things that John and I have done in the past, and we've identified, we've been very successful in cardiac products. We looked at specific manufacturers. He's worked closely with the Heart Lab. They've put together a list of products, part of the identification, and then we've gone through and we've identified, either from an unspec perspective or from a manufacturer, where those products are that they're currently being purchased, the line item detail associated with the products that you can see in the tool right there. It'll give you an idea of what their internal price is currently, and then compare it across the percentiles relative to the performance of other healthcare organizations throughout the country. And it'll establish an index for that particular product as well as the manufacturers that we're dealing with to give them a target as far as where they want to move through their negotiations.
And John, it would seem like the important thing on this would be is that you're getting a lot of information with one view. You know where you're at with one view.
Right. Everything's primarily basically right at your fingertips. As you can see in the red price index areas, those are indexes that we have on that product that's above a 50. So those are items that we want to focus and target as far as negotiating pricing.
So in this particular solution, green is good, red is bad. If you see red, you know exactly where to go.
Exactly. And green is good, but it can always be better.
Good. Excellent. Excellent. So it sounds like the data has really changed the way you do business. Would that be a correct assumption?
Yeah, it would. Every year we're tasked with generating savings, and having this tool really makes everything a lot simpler.
It never ends, does it?
Never does.
Never ends. Great. Thanks. All right, this wraps up our trip to Altman Hospital in Canton, Ohio. One of the things I think that's been impressive is just seeing the passion that the departments here have in integrating supply chain with good patient outcomes. So hopefully you've learned some of the things that they've been able to implement and replicate them at your organization and achieve your own cost reduction goals. Hey, we're back now in our live studio. And joining us from Altman is Chris Ingmark, who you saw in our video presentation. She's the Director of Purchasing. Chris, thanks for being here and thanks for answering our questions. How long have you been at Altman? And maybe you could talk a little bit about the impact of analytics on what it is you do.
Sure. I've been at Altman for 11 years. I manage a $60 million supply chain spend. There we're trying to always drive out every year at least 5% for cost savings goals.
Thanks for being there, and thanks for having us at your facility. And hopefully the viewers noticed that everybody in charge of supply chain at Altman is named Chris. So that's kind of a unique situation, so maybe
Makes it
a qualification for the job. We've also got here to share with us Greg Rector, who is the advisory services consultant here at VHA. Greg, maybe tell us a little bit about how you work with Altman to help them achieve their goals.
Well, I've been involved in healthcare supply chain for management for over 30 years, and as we saw in the video, my responsibility is to make sure that Altman maximizes their use of business intelligence and their analytical tools.
Excellent. Thanks for the input on that, too. So we mentioned earlier that you could ask questions, and we're certainly ready for those. We've actually been receiving some. If you are participating live on the Internet, what you want to do is use your Ask a Question button on your screen. Type in your question or comment and send it on. You can also send us a question or comment using email at vhatvlive@vha.com. So if you've still got questions, we're looking forward to hearing from you, but we have been getting some questions which we anticipated during the presentation, so I'm going to tap you with a couple of them. Just for clarification, Chris, in perspective, can you just restate the spend you're taking care of and then that spend goal that you're basically, or reduction goal you're being assigned on a yearly basis, kind of as a percentage of your spend? Because I think that may be something that a lot of our viewers, regardless of the size of their facility, might have in common with you, percentile-wise.
Sure. Every year we're taxed with driving 5% out of our supply spend. And this is supply spend, not counting pharmacy. And our supply spend is around $60 million.
And then we've got a question, I think, here. Let me open that one up. We've got a question from Columbus Regional. Hello, Columbus Regional. The question from Columbus Regional was, when they're trying to negotiate with vendors and they're using benchmark data from their analytics solution, they often hear that they can't negotiate off of the GPO tier, that they qualify even though there's pricing lower than what they're being quoted or they're able to see in the analytics solution. Do you have any suggestions for how you get around this? How do you negotiate when a supplier tries to put this constraint on your process, short of beating them up? As you
Right. We're done with the vendor beatings. We have data now. Basically, it's really not true. What they're saying is incorrect. VHA allows you to locally negotiate your contracts and still have them go through the national contract. So we tell them that VHA allows us to locally negotiate. Here's the price that we need to get to, and we're hoping that you're going to be a partner with us.
Yeah, and I think it's one of the things that John mentioned in the video even though your indice is green or you're already at green, you can always be better. You're going to hear a lot of different stories from manufacturers and vendors. They're going to try and avoid that transparency at every step. You've got to continue to challenge them and to move those prices down.
Good points, good points. And that also, we talked about the Chris's, but hello, John. Also, hello, Nancy. Thanks for the plants. Another question that came up is related to, there was a lot of mention about bringing physicians to the table. And so one question that a viewer has is, how do you get that done? How exactly do you bring a physician to the table?
Well, we made it look kind of easy on the video. Basically, though, our business manager in the cardiac services has been there for a while. He did not start a relationship with the surgeons or with the physicians talking about cost savings initiatives right off the bat. He was able to build a relationship by talking about things that were meaningful to them, their schedule, the kind of supplies that we offered at the hospital, the capital needs that they had. And that has progressed into getting them to the table to talk about cost initiatives.
Yeah, Altman's got a really mature relationship, especially with the cardiologists. A lot of the hospitals that I support aren't to that point yet. One of the suggestions that I make is to start small, to find a physician that you have a current relationship with. Maybe it's somebody you had a cup of coffee with, or maybe it's somebody you've worked in a community program with, such as United Way. But get with that physician, and as part of the identification process, like I said, start small, look for a small group of products, a single manufacturer, and then again, sit down with that physician and develop that opportunity. Use your analytics, educate that physician on where the opportunities are across the percentiles, and then once you are successful in those negotiations, make sure that you communicate that in the organization so that not only the other clinicians pick up on the success, but especially the physicians.
Yeah, and one more thing that I should probably fess up to. Our cardiologists are an employed group, and so that has helped somewhat. It's a little more difficult in the main OR where they are not employed. But we're trying to take what we learned from cardiac and how they built that relationship and infuse that into the other physician groups. And
I think I had a feeling this was going to be kind of a key issue with this topic because you guys make such a point of trying to integrate them in and sharing your transparency. We've got a question from Susan at Mayo, and she was asking about these physicians that you typically work with. Are they employed versus private practice? And if they're in private practice, how do you facilitate their participation in working with you to achieve high quality at a reasonable price? And do you have you provided any incentives to bring them on board?
Well, we do talk about our capital budget at the beginning of the year, and they do put their wish lists together. So that's the incentive, that they can have a new cath lab. We can go from 4 to 5 cath labs. That helps. Now, in the general population, in the main OR, we have had some success with our general surgeons, and they are not an owned group. We've been able to look at different initiatives with trocars and things like that. You know, so I think it just depends on having conversation with them and spending some time with them.
And Greg, in your experience with some of the other facilities that you're providing advisory services for, this issue of physician incentive, anything that you could share maybe with the viewers on sort of a best practice or things you're seeing?
Yeah, and just I'll get to that, but to highlight one of the things that Chris said, Altman's in an incredibly competitive market as far as the healthcare itself in northeastern Ohio. And I think they've educated the physicians, and I do see this in other organizations where they educate the physicians that if they want to continue to be viable, if they want to continue to be a part of that healthcare provision in that area, they've got to come to the table and become a part of the analytics and take a look at how it's used and to come on board.
Good. Got a question from Matt at Swedish. Once you've negotiated a reduction in cost, do you have any analysis to compare lost revenue related to cost-plus contracts? For example, if you kept $500,000 in supply cost in spine, but 1/3 of the payers are on cost-plus contracts, we don't actually improve the bottom line for the hospital by the full amount of savings. What's your take on that issue? Any thoughts or ideas?
No, I really don't. We do track all of our savings, and we do look at the revenue that's coming in, but Altman Hospital is primarily driven for cost initiatives, and that's my main goal in life, is to push costs out of the supply chain. I don't always get involved with what the revenue coming in is and things like that. Chris Parrish would be involved more heavily in that arena.
Right. Greg, thoughts on the...
Well, I think as with anything, you've got to look at the formula associated with your reimbursement and look at exactly what the cost component is associated with that. Chris Remark spoke about that at the beginning. The formula that they use at Altman, it varies from healthcare organization to healthcare organization. That cost will always be a component of that, and the transparency associated with your analytical tools will always give you an advantage in that area.
Well, and I think we heard specific wording about you're not looking for cheap. You're looking for correct cost on the correct product for the correct outcome.
Right.
So pretty important. Here's kind of an interesting question, and we've heard this around analytics before. So this might be from someone who hasn't used it or is just starting to use it. I'm worried that analytics reports might make it look like I haven't been doing a good job at negotiating the best contract. Was this a concern for you when you guys initiated use of your analytics solution?
No, it wasn't. Looking at areas like you saw in the video, I found that area of spine where everything was red, and it just gave me the impetus to go out and fight with that vendor even harder. You know, pull together a storyboard like we did with cardiology, and take it to the vendor and the physicians and try to fight for better pricing there. It gives me reason to work.
There you go. It would seem like if you didn't have the data before, you couldn't really know, which is kind of what you guys were saying. And now that data exists, you kind of need to know before somebody else knows.
That's right.
So that sort of the truth is out there, it'll come out. So here's a question here that is a little bit where someone's looking to figure out maybe how to justify placement of an analytic solution in their process. Did you have to come up with, or do you show an ROI projection that you use to justify the subscription to your analytic solution? And if you do, how'd you do that?
Yes, we did. We sent a sample slice of our data and got a glimpse of what the saving potential could be on that sample slice. And then we did build an ROI so that we could take it to the administrative group and ask for the funds in order to get involved in the analytical tool.
And this question I think you sort of alluded to when you were beating up suppliers, but and we don't want to beat that dog to death, but it sounds like fun. In the event that a supplier absolutely pushes back against your data, what do you do? Do you need to be prepared to let them walk?
No, I don't believe in ever letting them walk. I believe in getting what it is I need from them. Value comes in a lot of things. Like we said, it's not always about the cheapest product. Sometimes it's getting some value added within the contract, service or some other things like that. We push them to get the price that we need.
I think it's important that you pick your battles. The market changes from one year to the next. What might not be a competitive situation this year may be a competitive situation the next year, which is just another justification to continue to use an analytical tool so that when you get to that point, when you get yourself into that situation, you can once again bring that manufacturer to the table.
Right, and sometimes what we'll do is we'll go out for bid. If we have to take a step back and give them that we're going to walk kind of feeling, what we'll do is we'll back up and look at what was not competitive last time, and can we bring it back again this time and get the physicians to engage to actually look at this other product.
And I like a statement that came out when you guys were, when we were actually filming on your campus about this leveling the playing field. It's leveling the playing field. Both parties come to it.
Right.
So want to thank you both for sharing your knowledge with us and participating so that we could get the questions answered. And also Chris and team at Altman, thank you very much for your hospitality. We had a great visit, and it was really interesting to see what you're doing. If we didn't get to your specific question during our broadcast, somebody will follow up with you via email. We want to make sure that your questions are answered, and we may have to have Chris answer them. We want to make sure that you join us again for our next program, Lean and Supply Chain, a Lehigh Valley case study, and that's going to be on Wednesday, October 24th. We also want you to fill out those evaluation forms and let us know how we can better serve your educational needs. This program that you saw today is a direct reflection of what your comments and suggestions for the direction we headed. And to receive credit for watching today's program, the web address and instructions can be found in the accreditation section of your handout. And one last thing, don't forget to look for additional educational opportunities for you and your staff on our website, vha.com/supply chain videos. And now from everyone here at VHA TV, I'm Nick Fincher. Thanks for watching.